Welcome to Aging Insight with your host, John Ross and Lisa Schollmeyer. This program is made possible by
Welcome everyone to Aging Insight. I'm Lisa Schollmeyer and I'm here with John Ross. And John and I are elder law attorneys, and we are here to bring you information about the issues that you face as you retire and as you navigate through the blessings and the challenges of growing older. You know, as we get older, we can face all sorts of different circumstances. Some of those circumstances include dealing with medical issues. Some include dealing with housing issues and a change there. Some include dealing with financial issues. You know, how do you pay for yourself in retirement? How do you pay for the care and all that you might need? And finally, there of course are legal issues. But you know, John, in the elder law world, often one issue touches another.
Right, they're all connected in this deal.
Yes.
Yeah, and in all of that, you know, one of the things so many of our clients are concerned about is how to protect themselves and how to do right with the things that they have accumulated over their lifetime. Now, across the United States, for the average husband and wife, the single biggest asset they own is their home.
Right. You know, a lot of people, they have the American dream. They finally got that 30-year mortgage paid off, and they own their home.
And if you go back in time, you know, people would go to work for the company, whatever that company was, you know, the town company, and they would go to work and they would work at that same company for many years. They would retire and they would get a pension check.
Yes, and it was just a defined check that would come every month, and you know, you were part of the pension program. But you know, John, those type of traditional pensions, you just don't find those as frequently anymore.
Yeah, basically, unless you work for the government, you're pretty much not going to see a traditional pension hardly anywhere anymore. And that's because back in the 60s, 70s time frame, many companies started switching to retirement accounts where the employee could contribute a portion of their pay tax-free into an account where it could grow over time. And these were all governed under various IRS rules with fun little code designations like Section 401k or 403b and many others out there. Yeah. As a general rule, you can kind of refer to these things as qualified accounts, but these are things like your 401ks, your IRAs, your 403bs like teachers get and that sort of stuff. But these days, at least in my experience, Lisa, when I'm visiting with clients, most of them have a house.
Yes.
But most of them have an IRA. And I'm actually now starting to see a shift where many of those clients have IRAs that are even larger in value than their home.
Well, and if you can tell, today on Aging Insight, we're going to talk about those IRA and qualified account retirement benefits because there's a lot of ins and outs on these type benefits, particularly when, you know, John, both spouses often these days, they each have their own IRAs or 401k accounts, and so estate planning choices are to be made with those accounts. So today we're going to talk about those on Aging Insight.
Well, and particularly as it relates to the surviving spouse. So often I have met with clients, I've met with a husband and wife, and they've come in to do some estate planning and maybe some wills or a trust or whatever it is. They want to talk about their future and their family's future, and we've put a plan together. And at some point in time later, I'm back visiting, but with one of them. And the reason I'm only visiting with one of them is because the other has passed. And sometimes this has happened very close in time. Sometimes they've been clients that I haven't seen for years and years. But oftentimes I'm sitting there with that surviving spouse who's trying to figure out what they should do with the IRA, because all of a sudden they've been exposed to a range of options, in large part because of the complexity of these IRAs. That, anytime the government's going to get involved with something, they're going to make it complicated.
That's right. Well, and of course, you all out there, you may know that, individual retirement accounts are, those are the accounts that most people think of that they can contribute money during their working years, and maybe their company might match a certain percentage of those contributions, and you typically get a tax write-off during the year that you contributed the funds to that IRA account. And the idea is that you're going to defer the tax, and you'll pay tax on that account after you retire, when you start taking the distributions from that account, because presumably you'll be in a lower tax bracket when after you retire than you are during your active working years. So the idea is, with these individual retirement accounts and 401k accounts, is that you pay less in tax. You contribute while you're working, and then later on, after you retire, when you start drawing on these accounts, you are taxed typically on those withdrawals, but the tax will be less. And so, John, when it comes to dealing with those accounts, when you have a husband and wife, and one has passed away, and the deceased person had an IRA, well, there's still money in it. They haven't pulled it all out.
And so there's things that have to be done, and decisions that have to be made, and all of these decisions have a few things to do with some of the other rules that go along with these. For example, if I contribute some money to an IRA, that money can sit there and grow interest and stuff, and it grows tax-free.
Right, that you don't pay an annual tax on any interest or any growth in that account.
But what if I need some of it? What if I decide I want some of it back? Well, if I'm under age 59 and 1/2 and I pull money out of that, I would have to pay, not only would I have to pay the tax on it, but I have to pay an additional tax of 10%, what they call the early withdrawal penalty.
Right, so if you're under 59 and a half and you have an IRA asset out there, you need to think long and hard before you draw on it to provide for your current needs, because you're going to pay Uncle Sam an extra 10% penalty.
That's right. Well, but I might even be on the other end of this spectrum. Maybe I've got enough money coming in from Social Security or a pension or whatever, and so I'm thinking, you know what? I'm just going to let that grow tax-free forever, and I'm never going to touch it.
Well, as I like to say, the tax man always gets his cut. And with IRAs at an age 70 and a half, you are required to start taking at least some minimum distributions. And whether you need it or not, your IRA account must send you a check for at least a minimum amount. And they have a formula that they calculate what that minimum amount is.
Based on your life expectancy and things like that. And so all of these rules play into this situation where now the spouse with that IRA has died, and the surviving spouse has to make some choices. So use the break here to remember all of the things that we just said, because they're going to be important in the next section. So stick around, we'll be right back.
At Advantage Senior Care, our goal is for seniors to stay home longer, stay healthy, and above all, stay happy. Our individualized plans are tailored to your loved one's needs, from meal preparation, shopping, and light housekeeping to bathing and dressing, mobility assistance, and companionship. Our trained caregivers will help maintain your loved one's independence while providing you with peace of mind. See how our family can help yours. Trust our locally owned and family-operated senior care service. Call Advantage Senior Care today.
The Wadley Senior Clinic has been such a blessing for our family. Because they specialize in geriatric care, they take the time to really focus on Dad's needs. Their exam rooms are specially designed for seniors, and they offer lab and x-ray on site. With monthly educational programs on health and wellness of the mind and body, our healthcare questions get answered. Best of all, they accept Dad's Medicare benefits. See what the Wadley Senior Clinic can do for you. Wadley Senior Clinic, where healthy relationships begin.
Welcome back to Aging Insight, everybody. I'm John Ross here with Lisa Scholmeyer, and today we're talking about the decisions that a surviving spouse needs to make in relation to the IRA that their deceased spouse has left them. Now, I guess the first thing in all of this to before we get into it, because I just thought about one other thing. This all assumes that the surviving spouse is actually the beneficiary.
You know, I thought the same thing. And, you know, when it comes to IRAs, most IRAs certainly 401ks are governed by federal law that actually requires that the spouse be the beneficiary unless the spouse has signed a waiver where they understand that they are not named as the beneficiary of this 401k. You know, if you're a married couple. So most of the time between married couples, the spouse is always the beneficiary. It is very rare that we see anything but the spouse as a beneficiary.
That's true. However, we need to make sure that it's the current spouse.
Ooh, that's a good point.
Because there are some relatively big cases out there. One that went all the way up to the United States Supreme Court, where a person had named their ex-spouse while they were married to the ex-spouse as the beneficiary, then never changed it after they divorced that spouse and remarried another, and the end result was that first spouse
got the 401k. So, you know, when we start talking about these, when we're visiting with clients, we always say, you know, even if you think you know,
be sure.
You better go back while we're talking about these things and check with your HR people or check with your custodian of your account and make sure that your beneficiary designations are in place.
That's right. Well, now, as we get to talking about the actual IRAs, and you're the surviving spouse, you're trying to decide what to do. You've got several different options. The first one obviously would be, well, you could just pull all the money out and take it and do with it what you want. But of course, that's generally going to be a bad idea. And the reason is because, again, that money has grown tax-free this whole time. And if you pull it out in one big lump sum, which you can do without penalty, but you're still going to pay income tax on that money. And that, if it's a large amount, not only is that going to be income tax to you, but it could push you up into much higher tax brackets. If it puts you up into the highest tax brackets, not only is it going to be taxable, it's also going to cause your Social Security to become taxable. And if your income goes over a certain amount, your Medicare premiums also go up. The $104.90 that most people pay for Medicare Part B is because they don't have other taxable income. But if they have other taxable income over a certain amount, even that amount gets bigger. So generally, you're not going to want to pull it all out. So for most people, that's going to leave you with two options. One, leaving it as an IRA in the deceased spouse's name, what's often referred to as an inherited IRA. So essentially, if you're, let's say there's a man and a wife and the man has passed away, the IRA just stays there in the man's name for the benefit of the wife. But the reason because it stays in the man's name, it's still treated under his life expectancy. So for example, if whenever he would have turned age 70 and a half, that's when money will have to start coming out of it. So there's a difference there. The alternative to that is a spouse can roll that IRA over into their own IRA. And if they do that, then it's treated as if it was always their IRA. So now, where the husband has died and the wife has rolled it over into her own IRA, it's just like she has always had it in that IRA. And so it's going to be based on her life expectancy. And if she's under the age of 59, she can't take it out without penalty. Whenever she turns 70 and a half, she's going to have to start taking some money out. But between these two, depending on the age of the couples, there might be some differences in what you want to do.
Right. So, the first thing I hear from that, John, is, think real hard before you just go and yank that IRA of your deceased spouse out of the account altogether.
Absolutely.
And then the next issue really looks at the age and financial circumstances of the deceased spouse and the living spouse. If there's a big age difference, such as maybe a 6, 8, or 10-year difference between the man who's passed away and his wife that has survived him, then if you're the wife, you may not want required distributions to be triggered when your husband would have turned 70 and a half, because under the rules, the IRA that was his, you must start receiving distributions at his age 70 and a half, even though he's now deceased. And if you're 62, you may not want to be receiving those distributions, number one, because it's going to deplete the account faster.
That's right.
And number two, it's going to increase your taxable income. And you may still be working. You filed for Social Security earlier, and there's a lot more penalties when you have income, when you've taken Social Security before your full retirement age. So that is certainly something to think about.
Yeah, so like in this example, we have the husband who's deceased, who is older, and the wife who is younger. And so on the one hand, yeah, you may not want to have to start taking money out of that sooner because the older deceased spouse is going to turn 70 and a half sooner. On the other hand, though, if the surviving spouse is under age 59, the benefit of it is she can pull that money out without a 10% penalty.
Yeah, because normally if you pull any money out of an IRA at age, under age 59 and a half, you pay tax and the 10%. But if we have a husband and wife here where the husband's deceased and the wife is, say, 56, she can pull on his IRA without the 10% penalty.
Yeah, so depending on the financial circumstances and all of that. Now, of course, you could flip all of this as well. If the surviving spouse is the older one, if they were to roll that IRA over into their own, now they're dealing with their own RMDs, their own life expectancy, and things like that, and so. They may want to be able to push that to age 70, but they may want to be able to take some more out. So it all depends on their income, their assets.
There's a lot that goes into this. And, you know what? I want to talk about how that could play into when you claim your Social Security when we come back from this break. So stick with us.
At Advantage Senior Care, our goal is for seniors to stay home longer, stay healthy, and above all, stay happy. Introducing the Independence Check. A trained caregiver will visit your loved one in the comfort of their home, providing assistance with medicines, meal prep, caring companionship, and more.
Miss Smith, I just stopped by your dad's. He's taking his medicine and doing great.
See how an Independence Check can make all the difference in your loved one's day. Call Advantage Senior Care today.
I'm so glad we found the Wadley Senior Clinic. Their team specializes in caring for older adults, and their doctors listen and work with me to keep me healthy and independent. With monthly educational programs, x-ray and lab, and state-of-the-art exam rooms, I get expert care and understanding about what I'm going through. Best yet, they're easy to get to right off the interstate at Jefferson. See what Wadley Senior Clinic can do for you. Wadley Senior Clinic, where healthy relationships begin.
Welcome back, everyone, to Aging Insight. I'm Lisa Scholmeyer here with John Ross. And today we're talking about sort of an alphabet soup, 401k, IRAs.
That's right.
And we're talking about some of the issues that happen when you have a married couple and one spouse dies who owns an IRA account. You know, John, I always remind clients that an IRA stands for Individual Retirement Account. And so those accounts are actually, in fact, only owned by the individual that is named on that account.
That's right.
And so if you have that situation where your spouse passes away, they own an IRA, we talked about all the considerations to make about whether to take it out, how to take it out. But you know, John, one thing is if you yourself are not yet signed up for Social Security and you have a spouse pass away, maybe they're a little bit older than you, maybe they are already on Social Security, you know, one thing to think about, John, is using that IRA, if you need to draw on, because you can, and delay yourself signing up for Social Security. Now, you know, what's the thought behind that?
With Social Security, you can either claim under your own work record, or if you have a surviving, if you've had a spouse who's died, then you could claim on the deceased spouse's work record, and essentially you get whichever's bigger. But it's possible that you know, if both spouses were workers, then they both contributed to Social Security. So it's possible that by allowing your Social Security, which grows by 8%.
8% a year, that you delay accepting and taking that Social Security.
That's right. There's no investment out there that's paying 8% except Social Security. And so while you could start it at 65, if you wait for every year after that, it's growing at 8% until you reach age 70, at which point it's 130% of what the normal monthly benefit would have been at 65. That can be a big difference. So if you're this surviving spouse and you've inherited this IRA, you may have the opportunity here where you can take money out of that IRA, and yes, you're going to pay taxes on it, but if that money's not growing at 8%, it may make more sense to let that Social Security grow instead of going ahead and electing that Social Security benefit. Now, of course, this all depends on what the Social Security benefits are.
Sure.
There's no point in you delaying your own record if your surviving spouse's Social Security is bigger anyway.
Right.
So if you never worked, if you were a stay-at-home mom or stay-at-home dad and never worked, then delaying your Social Security is not going to do any good. You might as well just go ahead and claim the survivor benefit. The other thing, and this is not necessarily a consideration on the back end, but while we're talking about the surviving spouse, as Lisa mentioned, in virtually all situations we deal with, people that have IRAs have named their spouse. And that's all fine and dandy until you start getting into those later years. When you leave behind a surviving spouse who has Alzheimer's, who is incapable of caring for themselves, who has Parkinson's or has had a stroke or whatever the situation is, oftentimes all you have done is limit their ability to be able to access government assistance programs like veterans benefits or Medicaid benefits. In many cases, there's leaving to a spouse who is either sick or is of an age where sickness could strike at any moment. That may not be a good idea. There may be some other planning tools in there.
Right, dumping a big IRA into the lap of someone who may be compromised due to their health or capacity issues. And so there's actually a solution to this, John, and you can name a trust as a beneficiary on an IRA. So if I have a spouse like an Alzheimer's situation or some other incapacity that I know about, or if there's a potential for that, which here's a tip, folks, there's a potential for everyone to face some incapacity. We can actually name a trust as the beneficiary of that IRA, and the IRA money will pay into the trust for the benefit of that incapacitated spouse. and we shelter that IRA money so that that spouse can access or continue to receive Medicaid or veterans benefit programs.
Yeah, this might even be important if there's other issues like creditors or, racking up a bunch of medical bills prior to death and things like that. So there's a number of different things that you might want to think about in that sort of situation.
Well, I was even thinking about, if you have, a lot of times in the family situation, if the wife is left behind, maybe she could just never say no to those kids. And
maybe so.
if
Who
dad's
knows?
leaving her behind, he may think, hey, I might want to put this in a trust so she doesn't dole it all out to the kids just for asking.
That's certainly a possibility. Well, once again, we're coming to the end of another edition of Aging Insight. As always, if you have other questions, you can always call us during our live radio program on 98.7 FM every Saturday at noon. You can call in, you can ask questions, we'll answer them right there live on the radio. We also have our Aging Insight magazine, which is available at our offices at Ross and Schollmeyer, but also in probably your local doctor's office, hospital waiting rooms, financial advisors, social workers. Lots of folks are walking around out there because it's got good information about Medicaid and veterans benefits and all of that sort of stuff. And of course, we also have the Aging Insight website, where if you want to try to catch a past episode of the show,
or if you need to rewatch this one because it
was kind of
complicated.
Yeah, so you can always go to www.aginginsight.com and you can find us there as well. So lots of good places to get good information. And when it comes to something like an IRA,
you need to get personal advice. There's no general advice that's good for everyone when it comes to an IRA.
No, and you probably need to get that advice from several people. A financial advisor is going to look at it from one way.
An accountant,
a
yes.
CPA is going to look at it from a different way, and an elder law attorney is going to look at it from a third way. So get lots of advice out there. Hope you enjoyed the program. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for this week's Aging Insight program with John Ross and Lisa Schollmeyer. This program is made possible by